So, no matter what position we are in life, knowledge is very, very important. And that's unfortunately in great, lack right now. There's very little real knowledge among people in general about anything really about life. We've got so much incredible education, and material dimensions, all the science and all the advancement and technology of all types and whatever, but there's almost no real spiritual knowledge, like really understanding the truths about life. And it makes for a very difficult situation for everybody.
Hey there guys, Ruben here. This one is an important episode about how spiritual life is really a life of responsibility. Some people may think that spiritual life just means being in the now and not caring about the future and the past. So in this episode we're gonna really take a look at what real renunciation is and what that really means. And like Balakhilya says, renunciation is actually real renunciation is in the consciousness. It doesn't have to be that you just give up all the things that you have and live on nothing and then you're suddenly a spiritual person. But it means using that for the correct purpose, whatever you have, talents, wealth. We're gonna see how we can balance giving up our attempt to control things, to be able to give that up and be able to trust in the Supreme, but also really hands-on taking responsibility in our daily life. This is episode number 40 at Breaking Trail podcast. In my life, the situation seems to have come up quite often where we and when we have our classes, situations that we'd like to kind of bring up into the episode of today, which is kind of like the tendency of people to see spiritual life as something that doesn't require responsibility. It's just like one or the other. Like you leave material life and you go to spiritual life, and that means you leave the material responsibilities and taking care of that situation, and you just like float off in some other dimension kind of thing. And so we wanted to speak about that and the real meaning of renunciation.
Yeah. I've come across that many times myself. And it's like, I think people read the books well, some people anyway, they read the books and they hear about some renounced yogi or some spiritual person who's a mendicant and just wanders around and, lives off society, getting his food and shelter where he can from whoever will provide it.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have to work. He doesn't have to, be obligated to families and jobs and et cetera, et cetera. And so it's kind of like a material form of liberation for him. I mean, that's the concept I think some people get from this. They're not responsible for anything.
Right.
They just do whatever they want. And I've seen it happen in ashrams and temples where people live there basically with that same mentality, like, oh, I don't have to pay rent, I don't have to work, I got a free place to stay, I got free food to eat, and my payment is I have to do a little work around the temple, or I got to, do something in regards to this whole movement or this action that's taking place. I can chant a little bit, I can do my meditation, and it's like spiritual dependency on
exactly
on some institution or something. So it breeds, it has that danger of breeding irresponsibility, you know. And this is not really spiritual life. I actually have also known of some cases like, a husband, wife, and maybe 2 kids. But the husband has the concept from reading the books and so on that he doesn't have to work, that God will provide. All he has to do is chant or meditate or whatever, the process is that he's following. And somehow God will provide.
No.
And so, of course, no money comes in. So they can't pay the rent. They don't really have proper food for the family. They don't have any facility if something goes wrong. No backup, no anything. Yeah. And so the wife, and the husband is just so stuck on this, he basically refuses to work and support the family. So the wife eventually has to go to work herself and take the responsibility on her shoulder. And then the husband comes to the wife and asks her, "Oh, can I have, $5 to buy gas so I can go do this? Or, can I have $10 to do whatever?" In other words, now he's dependent on the wife.
Exactly.
And it's really, just not spiritual life. But, they may think, oh, but this is spiritual life.
But yeah, I've seen, but that's kind of like, so you're basically moving over your responsibility to someone else. And then when the situation goes down, that something unexpected does happen, you need that support, then you're dependent on that person. But I mean, in that sense, you're damaging that person's spiritual well-being as well, aren't you? Because you're like putting that person in a situation where they have to support your lifestyle, which is not really a spiritual lifestyle, but a kind of like a pseudo spiritual lifestyle where you're
yeah and that's why these ashrams, for instance, are, if it's a proper ashram, like run by our spiritual master or something in the past, it's a fantastic opportunity for, fully engaging in all day, activities of hearing and chanting and practical service and, being properly trained and guided, etc. But, all too often it morphs, with certain individuals into this welfare dependency state.
Yeah.
And then it's counterproductive, so sometimes those things are just disbanded, so to speak. Okay, you go out on your own. You get your own job. You get your own bank account. You get your own modes of transportation. Or take care of your own personal needs. It's your responsibility now. We're not going to do it for you.
No.
And I've seen people that came from, those dependency ashram situations to real life, so to speak, taking care of their own, material situation, actually just quit chanting, or quit, engaging in spiritual life, because when you took away the free goodies, then they kind of didn't have the interest that they pretended to have. They just, okay, then what's the point? And then they just became like, not interested.
Yeah. There's actually a story that I heard about, it was a testimonial about a woman who was writing a review in a so-called spiritual book on Amazon, that her husband became so detached from from reality. It's here. I just kind of paraphrasing. By following the living in the now philosophy, he got so detached from reality that it kind of basically destroyed their marriage. He was just drawn away and couldn't function in the.
Yeah. So that's just some of the dangers of not having proper training, proper guidance, and proper sincerity. The spiritual master can train the student or the disciple properly, but if the student or disciple is not, qualified, not a bona fide student or disciple, then they can just take this as like we just said, an opportunity to get lazy and irresponsible. And you can't blame the spiritual master. Some people try to put everything on somebody else. But, each person's an individual, and, they take either the golden opportunity that they may have to actually have this access to true spiritual life, and the best, care and guidance they could possibly have, or they can take the same situation and exploit it and, actually become offensive, and it becomes, a great source of damage to them.
Yeah.
Spiritual damage.
Yeah.
So it always comes back to the individual. We have to be responsible for our life. I mean, you can't get away from that point.
But how do you find then the balance? Because you were saying that if you think that you should be reliant on a supreme power for your sustenance and your life, and we're told that we should if we want to progress spiritually, I guess it's a general idea that people also know that we give up the fruits of our activities. We're not attached to the results. But at the same time, you have to take some responsibilities of finding that balance, I guess, not just saying, well, it's up to someone else. I'm just gonna hope that it falls on my head. And
yeah, well, that advanced stage of life in the Vedic system is known as sannyas, and it requires a very high level of spiritual qualification to actually be in that.
Oh yeah,
it's called the fourth order of life, or the renounced order of life. And so you do give up, all the methods to get your material requirements and everything. But the other side of that is you have this incredible spiritual knowledge and spiritual, ability to give that to people. So that is your offering to society, to enlighten them spiritually. You are the source of this truth, not the source, but you are the medium for this truth. And so they, in turn, gladly give you your support to take care of your material needs and so on. Yeah. But this is not connected with friends. You've left, you're not married, you've left family life and all these, situations that do require you to provide, material necessities for the family and et cetera, et cetera. You're now in the status of life where you're not involved in that. So your only real requirements are just the basic needs to keep body and soul together. So that's not very much, really. You're not trying to achieve any material goals and success and so on. But you're giving this spiritual guidance and light and knowledge and, training and access to the Supreme Lord.
Yeah.
And so you get a little food where you do, and your shelter where you do, and you've kind of reduced your needs to a minimum. But that's not in the system we have today. See, this is prior times, previous times when the whole society was, following the Vedic system. And so these people in these renounced orders of life were actually revered as the saints that they were, if they were truly qualified. I mean, some took advantage of it even in those days. And it's stated in our scriptures that they just become a menace to society.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see
just
that.
a burden on society.
Yeah.
And some people, again, just as we were referring to earlier, would see it as a good job. All I got to do is just, wear these certain clothes and pose as this, renounced person, and society will take care of me.
Yeah, but that's...
So they're described as charlatans, or pretenders.
I mean, it's the same in terms of religion, or so-called religion. You join the group and you adopt their way of thinking and their way of viewing things, and you can just sit back and relax, and they'll do it, and you get sustained. And as long as you kind of adopt these ways of living, like it's a group thing.
Yeah. So
then you're on.
So there's many dangers, but the true renounced person, the sannyasi, etc., he is totally fearless. He's not afraid, I'm going to starve. What's going to happen if this? What's going to happen if that? He actually is truly dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And, he will always be taken care of by the Lord, because he's in the consciousness of, I am the eternal servant of the Lord, and I'm donating everything I have to his service, and I'm in his hands, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that same consciousness can be had in, householder life, it's called, when a person does have family and so on. Not that they renounce their jobs and work, but they still have the same understanding, my success or my failure in business, or my success and failure in, material necessities and whatever that is going on. It's all dependent on the Lord anyway. I take responsibility. I do what I have to do, but I know that the fruit ultimately will be given or withheld by the Lord. And it's the same consciousness, but it's not like, I don't do anything. They do what they need to do to take care of their material obligations.
Yeah.
You see. But if something goes wrong, they don't freak out. Well, yes, that's just my karma. This is, the will of the Lord, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not irresponsible in any way, but they're still, and everybody's ultimately dependent on the Lord.
Yeah. And
everybody.
And you're doing, I guess you're doing your 100%. If you're doing, of what talents and capabilities that you have been given. And if you give 80, that's, and you don't use the rest, it's kind of towards the lazy side. And if you use, if you try to use more than what you actually have, that's kind of over endeavoring, as we would call it. Yeah. I mean, so you have to find that.
Yeah. Yeah, it said, everything is owned and controlled by the Lord. And everyone has their individual quota. And for some people that quota is a lot, and some people that quota is not very much. but everyone should accept what is his quota and not more, knowing well to whom everything belongs. So, if you get what you get, but you want more, and you got to over endeavor for that, and struggle and so on, that's seen as like, well, you've got your quota, but you're trying to now get more according to your desires. And
Right.
and if it comes easily, see, we're taught that you should, get what comes easily. And if you've got to over endeavor for something, then that's not how it should be. So the idea of struggling so hard to get a lot of material goods, some people have to struggle very hard to just get the basics, you see. But in other words, the philosophy is work hard and get a lot in the modern world today.
Yeah.
And so that's counterproductive, and that's not according to the scriptural teachings.
Yeah.
Take what you get and use it as much as you can with the right consciousness in the service of the Lord.
But then what is a true understanding of well, because there's a point that I would like to bring in, which is that I guess that's related, because you're saying many people see these spiritual teachers, or they see in some previous times some yogis doing severe austerities, and that is seen as spiritual life. And when we speak to people, they often say, they ask me like, oh, so when did you go to India to learn this? And they dream about themselves wanting to go to India, and I feel that it's the same, like that dream of that kind of renunciation. But then I'm wondering also, like, what's the real meaning and importance of renunciation, and why is that? What's the thing about why do you have to go to India to?
Like I say, real renunciation is in the mind, in the consciousness. And so if we read our Vedic history about some of the greatest kings, and there's been many, saintly kings called Rajarsis, and they had kingdoms, and in those times, the king was the king of the planet, like Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Parikshit, and so on. So their accumulation of wealth was vast, unbelievable, but they were not attached to any of it. It was just the position they were in. They were great devotees of the Lord, so they used their power and their wealth, etc., in service of the Lord. They took care of the citizens, meticulously, not only materially, but spiritually. And they saw their position is to protect the citizens, from being overpowered by lust and anger and greed, and to teach them to uphold all the spiritual values, and to tell them the real goal in life. I mean, to guide society towards spiritual development, see? And so the citizens actually saw the king, who was incredibly powerful and incredibly wealthy, as their father, their caretaker, their well-wisher. And they gladly donated 50% of what they had to the king, not because he went out and forced them to do it, but because they knew this is, the standard, and this was their desire. And so the wealth came in, but the wealth went back out, to the citizens. And so it was an ideal situation for everybody. But spiritual training was present in their societies from birth till death. And people were trained, who they were, that you're not the body, spirit, soul, what the purpose in human life was, and so on and so on. So a very different situation. And in that society, so the point, I guess, is the king was renounced, but at the same time, externally, he was incredibly wealthy and powerful and respected and so on. I mean, and you can read the histories of kings like, Maharaj Bharat. He was young and he had a beautiful wife and children, and he was one of these saintly kings, but he was not attached to any of that. And then at a certain point, when he saw that he could turn his kingdom over to, a qualified person to take that position, he left the whole situation and went to the forest, to perfect his spiritual life, And the same with Maharaj Yudhisthira. As soon as Maharaj Parikshit grew old enough to take the throne, he also left, So this is a whole different consciousness. So the point is they were renounced in that position of king. They weren't attached to any of it. So they didn't rule with greed and lust and, envy of someone taking their position and all those common dangers, of power, What do they say? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. But it wasn't true for them because they were not materialists. They were not, trying to find their happiness and so on.
From their position and
from their position. I am the king. And I can squash you. I can control you. I can dominate you. You must listen to me.
Yeah.
But these are bygone days. This is not now. We live in Kali Yuga now, when all those ideal, situations that we read about, they're not available now. So that's why in this Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel, chaos, confusion, where lust is so dominant and so controlling, and our intelligence and minds and senses are actually, the repositories and sitting places of lust, and, which also translates into anger, etc. See, that's the reality of today, So to try to be, like it was in the past, now, it doesn't work. So we're told don't do those things. One of the things that's forbidden in Kali Yuga is to take sannyas. See, for, a person to try to become renounced and be these, So to follow the guidelines is to chant the holy names, see, and become attached to the holy names and service to the Lord in whatever capacity you find yourself using, like you said, your talents, your abilities, your mind, your intelligence, your body in God's service, and service comes in many different ways, like in household or life, your service, to provide, material and spiritual well-being for your family. That's what your position is. And for the mother to raise, and the father too, but the mother, for instance, to raise, the children, with knowledge and understanding and guidance toward true, devotion to the Lord and teaching them they're not the body. That's devotional service. That's her responsibility. That's her position. And the fathers as well. They both have their individual positions and roles to play in raising the children.
But yeah, again, so that's the point that we're getting back to. Like, that is actually that in that they're taking responsibility, they're taking those, assuming those positions, and that's spiritual life. It's
100% 24-hour, all day, every day position. This is my spiritual life. Like a mother who takes care of the child 24 hours a day. You see, that's her life, really. I mean, mothers have that inclination, more than fathers. And so that's her responsibility. And if she's fulfilling that, then she's fulfilling her duty. And if she's got this spiritual knowledge and taking it as her spiritual life, her spiritual duty, her spiritual responsibility, then that becomes her spiritual life.
Yeah.
We're trained, for instance, in our system, the spiritual master is the teacher. He's the one who trains us. He's the life coach, so to speak. And he trains us in knowledge and truth. He tells us all the things that we should receive and try to understand and implement in our life. And he teaches us a life of full responsibility. Without the spiritual teacher, good luck. You read this book, you read that book, you hear another person's view, another person's angle on it, just like the person who you were just referring to, who was so absorbed in the be here now philosophy that it basically destroyed, the family. And so there's many, many people posing as teachers, and there's many, many philosophies that, may attract a certain person. But if you have a true teacher, then he doesn't allow you, if you, follow as you should, to fall into these traps. Like some people think you have to go to India to find a guru. You have to go to India to really advance spiritually. India is where it all happens. If you're thinking in the yoga terms, the real spiritual people and the real gurus and the real, everything spiritual is Indian. India, you must go to India. And like you referred to earlier, people ask all the time, oh, you must have spent a lot of time in India, or who was your Indian teacher, or on and on it goes, whatever. And why? Because that's the image that's been presented. Oh, the only gurus are the Indian bodies with, certain clothes and certain, features. They look a certain way and they speak a certain way and they have the aura and whatever. See? But that's just, another facade. It's just part of the illusion. There may be a true teacher, in that position of Indian body. Of course, the Bhaktivedanta Swami, who brought all this knowledge to the West, was, born in India, trained in India by his spiritual master, et cetera, et cetera. But does that mean that nobody but Indians are qualified to have this knowledge and pass it on? In fact, his teaching was the opposite. He came to the West and he gave everybody the same opportunity to become, realized in this pure spiritual consciousness, take this pure process and apply it to their lives. let that process purify them. He taught true bhakti yoga, true spiritual life, you know. And so it's just part of the illusion that a lot of people are in.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lot of people just waiting for a Westerner to come there, you know, because Westerners represent easy targets. They're pretty naive and gullible, and they represent money, and they represent prestige. Oh, I have so many Western followers, you know, and so on and so on. And so if you go to India with, you know, your eyes like, okay, where's it all at? You know, somebody will snap you up. Hello. And so, yeah, it's just, you know, false understanding, you know. It's based on the body. Oh, you got to be Indian. That's a bodily identification.
Yeah.
You know, it's just part of the illusion. We're all the bodies, you know.
Yeah.
When none of that is true, we're all spirit souls. And so there's many, many pitfalls in spiritual life.
Mm.
Mm. This is a funny story. What time is it? Yeah, this is a funny story. I was many years ago. I was in Australia, and so I was going to give a public lecture, and it had been quite well advertised. This was in Queensland, and it was quite well advertised. And so I went to the hall where it was going to be presented, and you know, I was early, so I just sat, you know, in many chairs. I just sat down on one of the rows of chairs beside with a friend of mine, and people were coming in, you know, and the table where I was going to sit was empty, you know, with the microphone. And so there was a couple. They were probably in their 50s, and they came and they sat right in front of me. And so people are coming in, and you know, they were talking to each other as a husband and wife, or I guess. And so anyway, the wife said to the husband, "Oh, I wonder what part of India the speaker's from." And the husband said, "Yeah, I wonder where he's from in India." You know, I just heard that. I mean, it was something, and I kind of just smiled to myself. You know, so it came time, everybody's there, and I was invited to come up and speak. And, you know, when I got up from right behind them, you know, total white guy, you know, Westerner, and walked up there and sat down, and they were quite like surprised. They were like, wow, this isn't what we expected. They were expecting somebody to come out from the back with robes and whatever. I don't know exactly what they expected, but probably, you know. But anyway, it just goes to show that's the idea, you know. That I hope they listen. I don't know if they did or not. I didn't go further with it beyond that. You know, so no matter what position we are in life, knowledge is very, very important. You know, and that's unfortunately in great, you know, lack right now. Is very little real knowledge among people in general about anything really about life. You know, we've got so much incredible education, you know, and material dimensions, all the science and all the advancement and technology of all types and whatever, but there's almost no real spiritual knowledge, like really understanding the truths about life. And it makes for a very difficult situation for everybody, you know, externally, internally, all the disturbances in society are a product of this, and
No.
on and on. So that's why you and I are, having these podcasts, is kind of give people a little bit of information about other points of life, and just go through your day with this understanding you're the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord, and trying to offer what you're doing, as, an offering to Him. And, that doesn't look very spiritual to many people. It may not look spiritual at all. You may be going to the factory and working 8 hours and, coming home and dirty clothes and tired body. But you may be, on a very high spiritual level. And the other guy's sitting around, in the twilight zone. Just in some illusion. You're still conditioned by material nature. That mode of goodness, like you said. And some of these people may not even be in the mode of goodness. It may be pseudo goodness. They may be completely in the mode of passion, struggling with all of that. Or, and because they have no real knowledge, there's also the influence of ignorance there as well. Many people in these so-called advanced levels still think they're the body. Or they think I'm not the body, but I'm God. Well, that's ignorance. That's not real knowledge. So still controlled. But the mode of goodness, if guided in the mode of goodness, can lead to pure goodness, real, spiritual life.
That's true.
Yeah, and if we apply this process, the hearing, the chanting, this purifies us. This is the ingredient that's necessary. It's that purification is what makes it so we start acting as who we really are. Spirit souls, part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. That's the truth. That's the eternal truth. And the purification of the illusions and the, the coverings of material nature makes it so the sun of truth, the dawn of light, actually appears in our consciousness. And we start waking up and seeing things as they really are, rather than through the veil of illusion. So we can't, do it mentally and philosophically. It takes the purifying agent. And for the age of Kali Yuga, that's the mantras. That's the given method. That is the austerity. That is the sacrifice for the Kali Yuga. And so we're always encouraging people to take that process, take this easy process, and add it to your life on a regular basis. So that is the recommendation of Lord Gauranga, the latest incarnation of the Supreme Lord Himself. This is His formula for success, formula for a real happy life. And so we can't do it just through, external movements or playing a game or, a certain philosophical opinion that we may have or whatever. See, we have to take the medicine as prescribed. And we're not the doctors. We're the patients. And the doctor is the Supreme Lord. Lord Gauranga is the supreme physician to cure us of our mental, physical, material disease. And the spiritual master is his assistant, his representative, his on-hands practitioner. And yeah. So our responsibility is to chant the holy names. Our responsibility is to please the Lord. He says the thing that's the most pleasing to the Lord is to chant my names. You see? But that also doesn't mean, you just sit around and chant all day and don't do anything else. Okay, well, if you go work, I'm just going to sit here and chant. That's the same thing again. That's just going back to what we were talking about. Take it into your responsible life everywhere you go, everything you do. And then you'll have the right approach.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I think we should chant them.
So, that being said, let's chant a little bit.
Yeah.
Gauranga Haribol. Okay. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga,
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga.
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo,
Haribo,
Goranga, Haribo.
Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo,
Haribo,
Goranga, Haribo.
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 Goranga, Haribo. Haribo.
Goranga, Haribo.
Goranga, Haribo.
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 Goranga, 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 Haribo.
Haribo.
Haribo. Namaste. Right.
So that's chanting, that's kirtan, that's the purifying agent. And anybody can do it. So easy, so simple, so attractive.
Yeah. A lady came to our kirtan yesterday, our meditation class, music meditation class yesterday, and she showed me a picture. I think she must have made it, or at least a text by herself. So to the left there was a black horse. That's kind of like this drawing horse, kind of like a unicorn, but without the horns. Anyway, completely black and white. And to the right there was one that was full of colors and lively and, you know, happy. And then underneath she said, she wrote like before and after kirtan.
Yeah.
So
There you go. Somebody who's realized this on their own. Okay.
so thank you, Balakhilya. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ruben. And
Well,
yeah, we thank everybody who may join in and, you know, watch the podcast. I hope, you know, you get some little treasure that you can take with you.
thank you, Balakhilya. Thanks for your time. Haribo.
Namaste, Haribo.
All right. Now, if you have anything that you're wondering about this, anything that we can make more clear to you, then as always, I'm really, really happy to hear from you. You can answer to our emails if you get our emails very spontaneously now and then from our email list. That you can subscribe to as well, but you know, you can leave your thoughts and comments by replying to that. Someone else asked about how to donate if you'd like to help us, and you can do that via Patreon. That's like a mini donation based website thingy. The link is available on our link tree or on our website breakingtrail.life. Yeah, that is a domain as well. Special one. So I'm gonna leave you there and hopefully get back to you in the weekend if you're listening to this already, early in this week, with the following episode on what spiritual life actually means. So now I'm just hoping that you will be inspired and be able to be true to yourself and dare to break trail.